This lecture is on the impact of media on food consumption, and it's going to look at the following syllabus links. So it's looking particularly at media and the ethical issues that relate to advertising relating to food consumption, and also the effects of this media and the effects of this advertising on food consumption relating to the promotion of foods as being health foods and also fast foods. Now, the main takeaway from this syllabus is that you need to be able to do the following. You need to be able to discuss, which is to look at points for and against, the ethical issues that relate to the responsible advertising of food products. So looking at what are the positive impacts of advertising and what are the negative impacts of advertising on food consumption. And we're going to look at a practice paper and a question that was an extended response to see how we can apply our knowledge of our learnings from the lecture today to this 15-mark extended response question. So to start with, we need to be aware of these key terms and their definitions because they do relate to the syllabus dot point, and you need to know what these terms mean to answer any questions in your HSC that relate to them. So the term media relates to any form of mass communication, and this encompasses ways of advertising through television, radio, newspapers, and we can see that there is the distinction between print media and also digital media. Now, digital media uses technology. Social media is another example of digital media through things like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and these are the ways that mass communication occurs. So a large number of people are communicated with via these forms of media. Ethical. The term ethics relates to what is morally right and what is morally wrong. And we're going to look at some differences between ethical advertising and non-ethical advertising. And you need to be across these and the examples that we provide in the lecture. So the food industry and media. The food industry uses media for several purposes. The first point is to increase awareness of a brand or an individual food product. So companies will use media, they'll use advertising so that the community and consumers are actually aware of different food products and different brands. They also use the media to shape the consumer's perception of his or her own needs and desires. And this is very much exemplified through the advertisement from Pepsi, where a new skinny can Pepsi has been released, but this particular person has been chosen to advertise the product, and this will appeal to similar people in society. And by looking at this advertising, they might assess their own needs and whether or not they think that they can strive to be like the person in the advertising, or they affiliate themselves with the person in the advertising based on her physical properties. And they then might feel the need to actually purchase this skinny product to be like the person in the advertisement. Another use of media by the food industry is to actually guide consumer product choices and their buying patterns. So the aim is to actually increase buying patterns, persuade people to purchase the products, and in turn, companies will be more profitable. So this slide has a look at the ethical issues and responsible advertising, and there are many ethical issues whereby companies are not ethical in their advertising and they're morally choosing to do the wrong thing, but they're doing it to increase sales and to increase the profits generated from the business. So there is a continual debate about the impact of junk food advertising on childhood and adult obesity, and there is a strong correlation between advertising these products and the increase in people who are overweight and obese. So we know that 1 in 4 children are obese, and we know that 67% of Australian adults are overweight or obese. And there are correlations between the increase in advertising of junk food and fast food and the increasing rates of people being overweight or obese. Now, the greatest concern is the effect it has on children, because children are less prepared and equipped to make wise individual food choices. They really don't have the knowledge and the understanding to differentiate between a product being healthy and unhealthy. And therefore, it does make it difficult for children to determine if a food product is healthy or not because of their age, because of their education. And it's unethical for companies to actually advertise unhealthy products by capturing the senses of children, which is something that they do, using bright colours, characters, music, jingles, etc. So this is an unethical practice. Now, children are more susceptible to the messages being delivered to them through advertising, which now surrounds us every day, on television, radio, billboards, in films, at sporting events, even through social media and platforms like YouTube. There's advertisements everywhere. The focus is not on the issue of health, as children are unaware of the value of the nutritional content of food. So how do advertisers actually appeal to children? See, these are some of the strategies that companies will use to promote products. So they'll use fun characters, bright colours, short story plots, and focus on fun, happiness, and play. There'll often be music, there'll be jingles, and there'll also be connections to movies and shows like Paw Patrol or Frozen. And these familiar characters get children excited about the products that are being advertised. These advertisements usually run during children's programs to maximise the number of children they reach, and messages are also embedded for the parents' benefit. For example, the catchphrase high in calcium is used on an advertisement, usually for dairy products like ice cream or even yogurt, but they don't focus on the negative effects of these products as well. So even though the products are high in sugar and saturated fat, the advertisement focuses only on what are the positive implications. So McDonald's does this quite well. They promote healthy eating by offering an apple with Happy Meals or apple slices with Happy Meals, and this will be the focus of the advertisement. And they purposely don't highlight that the meal contains the standard burger or nuggets, which are high in saturated fats, salts, and sugars. So this is a strategy that companies will use. They'll focus on the one positive component and they'll disregard the negatives. Milo does this very well as well. So Milo is a product made by Nestle. It's always marketed to be a healthy kind of product, and this is because they purposely choose to advertise it through sporting events or even with sports within the advertisement, so things like soccer or netball. However, the company disregards the negative health implications and the fact that this product is really high in sugar, and it can lead to conditions like obesity, diabetes type 2, and it can also lead to dental caries, particularly in children. So another brand that does this really well, they focus on the positives and they disregard the negatives. Now, the Advertising Standards Board is the Australian organisation that is responsible for overseeing, monitoring and responding to inappropriate advertising. Now, on the 1st of August in 2009, they launched a new initiative that established stricter rules for fast food advertising. And this meant that fast food companies could no longer advertise free toy offers, and they could no longer use licensed characters unless the meals that they were advertising had met specific nutrition criteria. So this here helped to level the playing field for children, and it was a more ethical approach to advertising, particularly for children. Now, there has been a notable drop in junk food advertising in recent years, and this has meant that fast food and junk food companies have had to become more creative when they advertise. A common trend now is to use other advertising techniques like cross promotions and product placement. So we're going to have a look at what they actually mean. So these are two strategies that you should be aware of. Now, cross promotion is where a company will advertise a product through association with a non-food related product. And a really good example of this is KFC being advertised with Cricket Australia. Now, an example could be also a television show or a film, or even, as I've mentioned, a sporting event. Now, this sparks the interest of large numbers of consumers who are watching the sporting event or who are watching the movie or the film, and inadvertently, the company will be able to promote their product through this other means. Product placement is another strategy that is used by businesses. Now, food advertising can be strategically placed in TV shows and films, promoting the product simply by its presence and association with the show. For example, a character might be drinking a clearly branded soft drink or eating a chocolate from a familiar purple Cadbury wrapper. So we can see here the Terminator movie has utilised this scene with Arnold Schwarzenegger to advertise the product Pepsi. And in this scene here, we see the scene from Ted, where the brand Doritos is being advertised. In Australia, the show Bachelor or The Bachelorette does product placement really, really well. So through advertising or even The Block, they use product placement to actually advertise their products. So The Bachelor and The Bachelorette use Kettle quite often, and The Block will do McDonald's, and they often will advertise through The Block to get widespread exposure of the product to a large audience. Now, ultimately, it is up to the individual, or in the case of a young child, their parent or their guardian, to make sensible choices concerning their food and diet. Advertisers have the responsibility to be honest about the product and to be clear about the nutritional advantages and disadvantages of the product. It is unethical for advertisers to lie, which is why advertisements will often highlight the positive points about a product and avoid addressing the negative. We're now going to have a look at the promotion of health foods. So companies use fortified foods as a way of making their products more competitive. And a fortified food is a food where the nutrient profile has been enhanced by adding a particular nutrient in a higher quantity than what it naturally exists. So for example, orange juice that has calcium added means that the calcium content is enhanced, and then that food is more competitive on the market compared to other products. And consumers do have a demand for health foods and dietary foods. So today, many companies are creating line extensions in the form of functional foods to meet the nutritional demands for consumers. And defining health food is difficult because there are no legal requirements on the use of the word health, healthy, or natural in food labeling. So consumers are really left to interpret these terms in their own way. However, FSANS does closely regulate some of the labeling that does relate to making these health claims. And it's important that health claims cannot be made in relation to curing a disease. So for example, a product that is high in calcium can say that it does contain calcium, as long as that company states it on the nutrition information panel how much calcium is there. However, this company cannot say that it will prevent osteoporosis because that is making a health claim. So companies cannot make reference to any products curing or preventing a disease. Promoting fast foods is another area of concern. Australians eat on average 4 meals per week that have been prepared outside the home, and many of these foods consist of fast foods. The major multinational fast food companies, including McDonald's, devote large parts of their huge annual promotional budget to advertising in the mass media. And you can see the astronomical figures that every year McDonald's will spend $55 million on advertising. Other companies that also use this advertising are brands like Pepsi, and they use a strategy called celebrity endorsement. Now, celebrity endorsement uses celebrities to actually promote a product. And you can see people in this advertisement. For example, we have Beyonce, we've got people like David Beckham, Britney Spears in the past, and even people like Kendall Jenner that the younger people in society are across. So having a look at this particular question, which was from a HSC exam in 2013, it's a multiple choice question. So a diet food company uses celebrities to promote their products. Photographs of celebrities are digitally modified to make them look slimmer before publication on the company's website. What type of issue is involved in this practice? So because this is a multiple choice question, there's a few strategies. We need to make sure that we read every answer. We then need to eliminate the incorrect answer, and then we need to select the answer that is the most correct. Even if 2 answers are correct, we're selecting the most correct response. So ethical. Is this an ethical issue? Yes, it could be an ethical issue. It's actually taking images and altering them and then presenting them to the community. Is it a legislative issue? It could be. We don't know if this is something that is permitted by law or not, and a lot of the laws relating to this are still unclear because the fact that, images can be digitally modified is a recent phenomenon. So the legislation might not have caught up. Cross-promotional? No. It doesn't involve taking that product, placing it against a completely unaffiliated brand and advertising it. So it is not cross-promotional, and it is not product positioning. So the 2 answers we have come to a landing on are A or B. We know definitely that the product, or this method, for the product is unethical, whereas legislative, we're still not sure. So the best answer for this particular question is A, ethical. We're going to now have a look at this extended response question from 2006, and we can see that it is worth 15 marks. So the question starts off with a quotation. It says, media and advertising have encouraged poor diets, leading to an increased obesity levels in Australia. Critically discuss this statement in relation to the impact of advertising on food consumption patterns. So there's a few things we need to think about in this question. Firstly, the verb is to discuss. When we discuss, we're looking at positives and we're looking at negatives. And when we do this, we're looking at the impact of advertising on food consumption patterns. So what are the positive effects of advertising and what are the negative effects of advertising? But we also need to make reference to the quotation. The quotation is saying that media and advertising have meant that people are choosing to eat in a poor manner, and advertising has led to an increase in obesity in Australia. So it would be wise to also unpack what obesity is and how it emerges from the consumption of poor diet foods. So obesity, we know, affects 67% of Australian adults. Well, they're technically classified as overweight or obese, and 1 in 4 children. And obesity comes from an energy imbalance, where an individual is not expending enough energy compared to what they are ingesting, and it's generally due to a sedentary lifestyle, and also making poor food choices, and eating food outside the home, such as fast foods and junk foods that are often advertised through media, through companies like McDonald's. So this question is asking you to discuss the impact of advertising, and we need to keep in mind that there are some positives of advertising, particularly in relation to advertising health foods. So having a look at this slide, we can really see that the negatives outweigh the positives, but there are some positives that you should be discussing. One positive impact is that there is promotion of good health foods and fortified foods and functional foods in our society. For example, low-fat foods do exist. There's a lot of functional foods that have added health benefits in nutrition, and there's also a range of line extensions that are advertised to consumers. We can also see ingredients that contain natural alternatives like stevia, and these products are sugar-free or have less kilojoules, which means that overall they are much healthier. Another point is that the government has actually spent a lot of money trying to raise awareness on health, and they do use media, not only print media, but also digital media through advertisements on television and on the radio about what we can do as a community to be healthy. And an example of this is the Australian Dietary Guidelines or the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating. But the final point is that there is an increased knowledge about health issues, and this is because consumers are concerned about health and well-being. So there is a lot of advertising by companies or advisory groups like the Heart Foundation or Diabetes Australia. And they write different publications and use different forms of media, including print media, to try and encourage people to have a healthy lifestyle. However, despite this, the fact of the matter is that 67% of Australian adults are still overweight or obese. So it is a big concern. And some of the reason for this is the powerful advertising strategies that are used by fast food companies and multinational businesses to really target people that don't have time to cook food, and it has led to 4 meals a week being consumed outside the home. So some of the negative impacts are the heavy advertising of fast foods and the energy dense foods that fast food companies provide in comparison to nutritious foods. And they will use, McDonald's will use strategies like the Monopoly campaign. And we know Hungry Jack's is using Uno to try and get people to go and purchase their food products so that they can get free food menu items. Also, the use of slim models can lead to body image and self-esteem issues. And often the airbrushing that occurs and the filters that are used are unattainable, but people are still left with negative impacts. There is also a reliance on self-diagnosis rather than on professional medical advice. For example, a lot of companies like Atkins that have a really low carb and high fat and protein methodology will use advertising to encourage people to purchase their different products. And this means that they are self-diagnosing and not getting the medical support and attention that they need from trained professionals. Promotion of snack foods has also led to a grazing lifestyle. For example, a company that produced Delights, which is a chip snack, and they use a jingle, Afternoon Delights, to try and promote that. as well as other foods like grain waves. Although they come across as being quite healthy, they are processed and they are high in salt. And the last point is that energy-dense food companies can spend more on advertising and promotion because often these are cheaper to produce than the less processed nutrient-dense food producers. So those are some of the points that you can consider. Example is this campaign, the Measure Up campaign. And this advertisement is a video that was shown, or was a film or a little snippet of an advertisement that was shown on television that showed a man walking down a measuring tape, and as he walked along it, he became heavier and heavier, and he was unable to go and play with his children because he became overweight. Now, this campaign encourages Australians to reflect on their health, and it does give them a website where they can go and get extra information on how to measure up and have a healthy lifestyle. Response.